Kevin Gonzalez, Vice President of Security Operations and Data here at Anvilogic. Past lives worked for a couple of Fortune 200 organizations managing cybersecurity operations, engineering, architecture, right, as well as managing some global security operations centers. Pass it over to Kevin Lowe, one of our senior researchers.
Hey, thank you. Nice to meet everyone. Third researcher here at Anvilogic. Served this role about 2.5 years. Prior to this role, played roles at digital forensics, cybersecurity operations, detection engineering, getting breadth experience and having a great time learning everything in IT with everyone today. So what we have in store for you is just kind of talking about what we're doing in Anvilogic, all the detection content we're releasing. We just released a GitHub repo that I'll toss to Kevin shortly. And just kind of discussing all the research aspects that we're doing. We're ingesting reports, learning from the security community how the threat landscape is constantly changing and what we can do to help keep you informed. And from there, we can dive into more of the weeds of research, detections, and then also kind of dive into the resources that we use to follow and what you can kind of use for your own learning as well. So with that, I'll pass it over to Kevin real quick to talk about the repo.
Yeah, so in case haven't heard, right? So we recently released a new detection repository that's open source on GitHub, right? This is the inner workings of our Anvilogic Forge team, which you're unfamiliar. It's the combination of our threat research, detection engineering, threat hunting, and data science teams that have actually help produce all the content that you can find within the real Anvilogic platform. What we've done is that we've taken a sample set of those use cases, right? Basically anything that we've ever publicly communicated to our customers and prospects, right? Got all that detection logic with some of the enrichment info associated with the use case descriptions, MITRE tactics and technique information, right? And then publish that out on the GitHub repo with a very simple version of those detections that you can easily deploy within your Splunk environment or your Snowflake environment, right? We're going to be working on some KQL samples as well for Azure Sentinel customers. Hopefully we'll be releasing those soon, right? And we'll make announcement of that when that does happen. The other thing to take note of that is we did release with the announcement of the Anvilogic Forge Armory, a couple of anti-VPN vulnerability detections, right? As well as a couple common use cases that threat actors have been utilizing while leveraging the exploitation of the VPN vulnerabilities. Pass it over to Kevin.
Yeah, real quick before you leave this one, I just want to make a comment on this. Really good work by the team in putting this out. I think this is especially helpful as folks who may be not familiar with Anvilogic can kind of see the way we do detections, because all of these kind of adhere to our general format, right, in the way that we publish detections. So I think it's just important to note that we do have a standardization process on these. And that's important for anybody who's doing detection engineering, is ensuring that you have a similar way you structure things so that it's clear what's actually being accomplished in those detections. Right. It's challenging, I think, for a lot of teams to come into environments where, detections may have been written in all kinds of different styles. And that's one of the things that we're big on here. And the Forge, Kevin's team has done such a great job of doing, is ensuring standardization where we write these to do similar functions in certain sections of the code. And hopefully I'm not stealing your thunder, Kevin, but I just wanted to call that out, that's how those are structured. So for anybody that goes and takes a look at those, there's a method behind the madness. It's very important.
Really appreciate that, Tim. Growing community will have more detections released on a consistent basis. The detections we have here are really highlighting the opportunities that we're seeing from reports. So really using the information out there to kind of find ways to improve our own security, right? So kind of recapping with that in mind, just the major events of 2023, discussing how the threat landscape's constantly changing. It's definitely not slowing down. I can see from cybercrime perspective, ransomware, 1.1 billion in payments as identified by Chainalysis, 10 billion in fraud from the FTC. So really focusing on the security aspect, making sure we're doing as much as we can to defend ourselves, have good security practices. On a personal level, we kind of most demonstrated from the Cloud ransomware gang and Move It, impact over to 2,700 organizations, all the data that's out there released since May 2023, companies coming forward, releasing disclosures. I've certainly gotten a breach notification, unfortunately, but even if that's not impacted by you personally, whether you're on the internet, our data is out there in some way, right? And making sure we're doing as much as we can to defend ourselves. One thing I highly recommend individuals to do is to freeze your credit really helps to prevent financial actors from utilizing information negatively impacting your financial situation. So really helpful in that regard. Identity theft monitoring is what they provide usually in breaches, but it's just monitoring. It won't really do anything in the way of preventing anything from negatively impacting you. And the credit freeze is free and easy. So really I recommend that route. And on the topic of personal security, we'll kind of touch on credentials. So making sure you have a strong, long, complex password. There's no overlap between what you use on a personal and a organization level. So, attacks for potential stuffing, that's utilizing dark web, all the breaches, what you have out there that's associated with you. Their actors are doing a great job kind of studying the organization, what personnel they have, so if there's a match in the dark web, does that credential have a match to you gain access to the organizational environment? So where you are today, if you're better at security, you gotta compare yourselves to the years prior, 10 years ago, where were you, and what kind of accounts did you own? So having good cleanup of that, making sure you have a good password. Along with that as well, just talking about password spraying. So the most common complexity of passwords, right? Microsoft in their report last month discussed a breach from the Russian APT group, APT29, using password spraying techniques to compromise a tenant account and move over to through the network and able to compromise senior executive emails. Any breaches I call out today is not to call any organizations out. Breaches occur, they happen, unfortunately, but it's incumbent on us as readers and our practitioners to be aware of what happens and making sure we take those lessons learned and apply to our organization. So
yeah, I was just going to interject there too and just say, yeah, we live in glass houses here in cyber. We can't be throwing any rocks. You know what I mean? Like we all can be accustomed to that. I think you raised a couple good points there. I just want to double down on was the credit freeze. As you were saying that, I was like, man, I need to go do that too, right? Like that's really important. It's an easy thing you can do to protect yourself because I have a stack of letters on my desk over there of the times that my information has been breached and they're offering me free, monitoring stuff. I literally have one for every member of my family because I think it was our dental practice that got, hacked. And it's like something about move it. And it was like, I was like, man, I know about this. And now my information's getting hacked out because of this stuff. You know what I mean? So it's crazy, but yeah, freeze your credit. No joke.
I appreciate that, Tim. Yeah. And for yourself, your family as well. I did for my parents. So definitely what you be aware of, be the gatekeeper and how you're having a pulse on the threat landscape and apply it to people around you, family, friends, neighbors. So everyone really plays a role here. And to that, talking about MFA, so we're talking about credentials and how the vital aspect of that is. If we're assuming credentials are compromised out there, what's the layered defense strategy, right? Defense in depth. Having good MFA implementation, making sure that's ideally an authenticator app or a hard token. SMS is out there and it's not the ideal method, but understandably, that's what you can implement. That's better, certainly better not having MFA. It's proven to work. Cisco Talos IR report from Nicole Hoffman talked about the quarter four Cisco Talos IR reports and how that combination of just patching, having good security hygiene with credentials is really vital in preventing cyber attacks. And in their report, they talked about incidents with ransomware gangs, right? So Play, Cactus, No Escape, Black Suit, all these attacks, threat actors were saying ransomware payments are up. They're highly accurate, but doing what you can to protect yourselves. And another example, just talking more about the importance of MFA, Beyond Trust in their back in September, October timeframe, Okta's customer support portal was breached. So any legitimate kind of engagements with Okta, there was a chance where you upload a archive file and it contained authentication artifacts, and a session cookie was used by threat actors to gain access to Beyond Trust environment through Beyond Trust controls of how they implement MFA and controls. It was able to prevent a breach from occurring, right? So with all these lessons we have, there are multiple detection opportunities here, whether it's from MoveIt, understanding what the community is reporting, seeing how you can have telemetry to address issues on your network, or detection opportunities that are more focused on like impossible travel login, adding MFA to your organization, adding an account, disabling MFA, multiple failures, and successful login, things of that nature. a lot of opportunities here for detection. Yep, and as we kind of pivot to a threat actor perspective, certainly a lot out there. I just want to pick two that were top of mind. Chinese APT group. What you're seeing from lately is CISA, FBI releasing information about Bull Typhoon since disclosures came out for that group in May 2023. The big emphasis from them is their pivot to disruptive style attacks, targeting critical infrastructure in communications, energy, water, transportation. Very concerning on that front. So what can we do as defenders? Well, using those advisories that they release, what is their motives and what is their behaviors that they've been observed from these reports? Opportunity, the main thing there was living off the land. So having good controls to have an asset inventory, seal software repository to understand what's running on your network. It was a really great starting point as we're talking about hygiene, but also they're studying your network, right? They have a very strong, proficient actors who are capable of laying low. They one of the longest dwell times because of those 5 years for their actors to stay dormant on the network, right? So making sure you have good detections, understanding what their actors are up to. One of the main things that stood out in terms of TTPs was taking copies of the Active Directory database. So you can kind of have having detections there for like NTDS.dit, seeing what has been compromised, monitor activities associated with that. RDP, allowed movement, was often called out in reports. So just taking what is shared out there and using it as much as you can to apply to your organization. And pivoting to APT 29, 28 from Russia, and we talked about how Microsoft announced their breach, but also HPE had a similar breach as well occurring last year. Highly proficient actors, certainly busy with how they're targeting organizations and just kind of keeping note of the unfortunate situation between Russia and Ukraine is still ongoing. What kind of destructive cyber attacks that they're launching, and concerns, when the conflict first started, it was like wiper activity, right? Seeing how Russia is deploying wiper malware, understanding behaviors from how they're launching those malwares. There's a lot of patterns with how Russia is launching wiper malware in pairing that with kinetic attacks. So seeing how the Russian military operates with a cyber arm and the soldiers on foot. Opportunities here for like multiple detections. APT 28 had multiple reports at the end of 2023 discussing their use of the Microsoft Outlook vulnerability, CV 2023-23397. Poland Cyber Command, Microsoft, they all released advisories warning about APT 28's use of this vulnerability. And we are fantastic detection engineering team here. We're able to study best detection opportunities for that vulnerability, along with other things that could be of value as well. So looking at inbox rules for like indicative of fur breach, so they compromise your email account, what kind of email rules you have, and constantly siphoning them out or moving your emails to different folders on your account. So really helpful there to see what you can implement on your network and to protect against these threats. As we're talking more about vulnerabilities, 2023 is certainly a year.
Kevin, can you go back for just a second? Sorry, I just want to call something out, right? So when you say detection opportunities on that slide, right? These are things in some cases that we've actually published on that repo that we were just talking about, right? So we have these out there. I know that for some of them, I'm not sure for all of them, but you can find detection use cases for these in that repo. And then of course, for Anvilogic customers, these are part of our armory as well. Just want to mention that. So if you're trying to figure out how to, operationalize that and make the rubber meet the road, we've put resources out there for everybody to be able to do that.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that, Tim. Yep. Everything listed under detection opportunities here are stuff we have in that repository and of course in our armory here at Anvilogic, and all these vulnerabilities that you see listed here as well, detections, how we're researching at these vulnerabilities and making sure we're releasing what we find back to the community on a regular basis as we update the public armory and our own Anvilogic armory. So in a year where vulnerabilities aren't short, we talked about the Microsoft Outlook vulnerability, but also different flavors on Linux, Ubuntu, WinRAR vulnerability. A lot of opportunities here to making sure we're monitoring what's trending, utilized by threat actors. WinRAR vulnerability was announced to be utilized by Russia and Chinese APT groups and Google Tags report. So making sure we have detection coverage there. And beyond just 2023, the importance of patching, understandably, is very difficult for organizations. We definitely understand, but just kind of highlighting the threats out there. Proxy shell, serial logon beyond 2023 are still prominently used and called out in reports. So any urgency to help drive those efforts to patch or just implement detections, highly recommended. So that recap, just want to dive a little further into the research aspect and how that drives detection engineering efforts here. As you can see, a lot of reports, how you're seeing like Volt Typhoon, APT28, using that information to help drive detection engineering efforts, making sure when you're examining these reports, we're taking that information back and like making sure there is a match in our armory of detections that help compensate for the procedures used. If not, it's an opportunity there to prioritize detections, communicating with the detection engineering team that this is often seen in the wild to help drive efforts, or just kind of help fueling the detection engineering for those vulnerabilities, things of that nature. And ensure that we have a wide coverage across the tactic technique framework. That's what we use here at Anvilogic. And also from that telemetry we collect, you can see the top techniques. So January 2020, nothing surprising here. And everything, breaches, you always see Windows still most targeted. Breaches, you'll see like PowerShell scripting for batch scripts, VBS scripts. But all the information collected here help to drive detection coverage, content, what kind of logging you need to help see these activities on network. Scheduled tasks, another one of these, laying out the lands, often overly permissive for what is used for automation deployment tasks. It's also an opportunity there for threat actors to leverage and schedule their own scripts, processes, things of that nature. If I can go back to technique level, MITRE doing research between 2019 and 2021 through their sightings project, studied 6 million events, and scheduled tasks was called out as one of the main techniques that were abused by threat actors. So really emphasizing that technique and just coverage across these various techniques that were identified are trending. And run DL32 will help me segue into this next slide. So as we're talking about living out the land, having understanding of these native Windows processes, starting with run DL32, highly versatile binary, what can be used to not just only run DL files at its core, but also like scripts, CPL files for control panel. Just having a baseline understanding what it's used for, the file paths as run from, so system32 or syswell64 based on a 32 or 64-bit architecture. We established that baseline knowledge of this Windows process. And then as detections, we can kind of see what are abnormalities that we can detect for. So executions with no command line arguments. Seen that a few times with Cobalt Strike. So abnormal behavior could pivot to network logs to help like fuel investigation, other signs of potential misuse, executing uncommon files like a JPEG file, as you've seen with some initial access malware, executing a file from a non-standard directory like temp, public, all these signs to help create use cases to help fuel detection engineering efforts and seeing what abuse of a living off the land process is like. And then at the Anvilogic 4 is kind of showcasing our threat scenarios. So as we're talking about each use case for run DL32 requiring some level of investigation, since it's a abnormal behavior, no command line arguments, or running using utilize for LSAS dump, calling com sbcs.dll. That's each of those are individual use cases that can be indicative of malicious behavior. You pair that with another use case, sequence it in a manner based on the reports that you're observing, and you have a strong threat scenario that is able to have high fidelity because it's a combination of these multiple use cases that are highlighting these malicious behaviors, and then having the added context to initiate an investigation based on the activity and seeing how that extends in other reports that we're examining. So an AWS breach, from Invictus does a great job of helping to give us to understand breaches in the cloud. All these other reports do as well. just finding ways to how we can operationalize intelligence. So from this report, you can kind of understand how attack in AWS unfolds, how the threat actor through a month-long campaign was able to run various API calls for like enumeration. Discovery is usually quite difficult to discern legitimate activity, but then we pair that within a scenario and having a time constraint, seeing that enumeration activity used and what events following. So this one, you would see a security group being created in an ingress point to manipulate the configurations, and also running instances, just like a preview of their end objective to mine cryptocurrency. So opportunities here to implement detections and create a scenario based on intelligence we receive. And that's also can be translated into something a little more simple, just creating a new user account for backdoor access, elevating its privilege with a new role, and then creating access key to run API calls. A lot of opportunities here from intelligence that's released by community, and how it's incumbent on us to utilize that for our detections. And just talking back really quick about the value of our threat scenarios. So what we're aiming towards is kind of studying the pyramid of pain. So I think most of us here are familiar with it. Detection value from IOCs are limited. They do have value in and of themselves for detecting various threats, but TTPs are what never are difficult to change from threat actors. So having that study of our research, examining those adversary behaviors to create strong threat scenarios that aren't reliant on a single point of an attack. So we discuss vulnerabilities is very critical and requires attention from each 0 days that we have vulnerability that's discussed, but not always looking for the moving needle, right? The detection, these threats are constantly coming, but adversary behaviors are consistent. If I can talk about WinVar vulnerability really quick, that vulnerability became public in around August 2023, but Group IP's tracking of that vulnerability dates it all the way back till April 2023. So just not always having that the knowledge of what the vulnerability is, but if you have good understanding of that adversary behaviors and detections focusing on their TDPs, you already have detections in the back end to enforcing that added layer defense model. Yep. So we'll talk about all these research and reports that we're ingesting, kind of giving you insights of where it's best places to learn. So one thing I really appreciate with this security community is that we're all constantly learning from the Anvilogic repository that we're releasing, and also practitioners out there who are on YouTube who discuss new technology, walk through incidents, helping you learn, or practitioners on X, Mastodon, communicating with the community, talking about what vulnerabilities they're seeing, techniques that are increasing. I certainly remember when Log4Shell came out in December 2021, Dev was on X looking at what was being reported and saw that being a trend. So community is very much alive and out there, ready to help everyone. Of course, all the various news outlets from various organizations certainly help fuel our reports. If you want to get away from the monitor, highly recommend podcasts. Cyberwire and cybersecurity headlines is what I listen for my news update. Cybersecurity headlines is just a quick, usually under 10 minutes morning listen, and then Cyberwire is a good in-depth kind of run through of the day's news, along with interviews from security leaders. So having multiple insights, kind of feeling so you'll learn multiple different ways, gain new perspectives.
Yeah, if I might make a comment, if you go back to that for just a second, Kevin, I think it's important to call out, right? It's like explicitly detection engineers have to take that first level of threat research and operationalize it, right? And that's what Kevin Lowe and others on our threat research team are doing. Is a lot of these vendors, right, that you see listed on the screen under that news portion, are doing a lot of that hardcore analysis, like whether it's malware reversing or whether it's kind of intrusion analysis, and really breaking that down. But then there's kind of a last mile that many of you are having to do for your organizations yourself, which is, how do I take that understanding of the attack and translate it into a functioning detection, right, for my organization with my data in my environment? And so that's that's one of the things that, is what detection engineering is all about. And Kevin is one of the best in the business, right? Being able to do this types of things. And so being able to learn from him has been really awesome for me, and kind of watching how we do this and how we keep up with all these things. And to his point, he does a really amazing job of keeping head on swivel with all these sources, right? And absorbing it, because it's a lot to take in and make sure that we're tracking. So that's one of the things we do at Anvilogic, but we're in it with you, as all you that are doing it for your organizations as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Really appreciate that, Tim. I've been just kind of doubling down on that, right? It's a community that we're all trying to help each other and grow together. So with our repo that we released, just take all the resources that were shared, making sure you take that back and implement research into your practice, whether it's the new insights that you gain from the various sources. Just kind of talking about my experience from working various cybersecurity operations. Blue teaming and red teaming really stand out the most to me. In a prior dispatch episode with Mike Monty, our senior customer of success, and Roger Allen from Sprinkler, head of detection engineering, spoke about the value of blue teaming and red teaming. As a detection engineer, when you're creating detections, it's very reassuring to have a red team counterpart who's able to verify that detection, but also through activities that they're launching on the network, if there are any gaps, you can create detections for and help improve your security posture. It's in no way is it like a red team versus blue team situation. We're all in this common goal, operating with a common goal of improving our own detections and security posture. So a lot of different ways to kind of learn and make an impact. Yeah, and almost done with this session. Thank you everyone for hanging in there with me. So I want to call all the sources that we contributed to this slide as well. And if there's anything you see here that you want to follow for our threat reports, we release them on a weekly basis. Get in touch with us, or take a look around our website to learn more about what we do, and happy to contribute and get in touch with you all to learn.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kevin. Yeah, if we have any questions, we got some time if you want to drop them in chat, or if you want to come off of mute and ask a curveball question, ask an easy question, ask any type of question you have. I just want to call out again, we have 2 members of our Forge team on here. I think we might have some more on the call as well. I sent the link to the GitHub repo in the chat. This is something really, really awesome, and a lot of hard work that's been put in from our team here at Anvilogic, and I think it's awesome that we're opening up to the community and you guys can access it and get a lot of the awesome stuff that they're doing here as well. So if you didn't get the link in the chat, let me know and I'll send it over to you. Any questions? Anything from anybody? Any comments?
I got a question, actually. So Kevin, how much do you see attacks differing across different industries versus things being common, globally? Like, I know that's a pretty vague question, but like, are attackers and adversaries really kind of using specific techniques on a per industry basis, or do you see certain things that break down that way? Just would be interesting your thoughts on some general trends.
Well, yeah, definitely. Thank you for that, Tim. So a lot of threat actors we're seeing kind of varies in their attack strategy. So they can focus on a specific target, like Bolt Typhoon, how they're tailoring their attacks to critical infrastructure, understanding that network. So eventually pivot over to the OT environment, causing that disruptive impact. But also kind of why we were stressing earlier about the value of credentials. So password spraying attacks, how you're seeing that from not just Russian APT groups, but the groups that we didn't mention, like Iranian threat actors, Peach Sandstorm, Octo Tempest with their advanced social engineering tactics, Lapsus, back in 2022, how they were running amok. Utilize these strategies to just, the low-hanging fruit is still very valuable. So it's incumbent on us to kind of raise the bar in a way to secure credentials, just not make it so easy for their actors to abuse poor security hygiene.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, that's kind of what I was thinking, right? Is there's so many of these things that are common. It's like, hey, we can all work on this, right? No matter what industry we're in, it's like, hey, we got to do a better job of credentials, of trying to use MFA, of doing these things. And then, like to your point, there is some specificity with an actor who may be targeting ICS, because that's a very specialized area that requires very specialized knowledge. But oftentimes with, information theft, the defenses against that can be fairly common across industries.
definitely.
I'm gonna wrap this up, guys. I really appreciate you guys joining. Really appreciate you, Kevin Lowe, you, Kevin Gonzalez, all of everybody who's from the Anvilogic team, as well as all of our guests here today for joining. We have a really awesome session in 2 weeks. Again, we have these every 2 weeks, which I already said, but gotta get another plug in there. It's gonna be with two of our principal data scientists here at Anvilogic, and it's really cool. It's gonna be focused on LLMs and AI and how you can leverage them in SOC operations. We're gonna dive into some specific use cases. We're actually gonna dive into how LLMs can help help your threat research as well, and help find patterns and help basically make your job easier. So I would really recommend you guys join. Stay tuned for that. If you have any questions or any feedback and there's a specific topic maybe that you're really interested in, feel free to reach out to me. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, or I can follow up with you on email, and we can pull together a session for you guys in the future. And pull together somebody from our internal team, partner with someone externally, and just create sessions that are valuable to our community. So that's my spiel. I'm going to finish it there. I hope everybody else has an awesome day today. Thank you, guys.